We gather this hour as people of faith, having sorrows and joys and needs and gifts. We light these beacons of hope as a sign of our quest for truth and meaning, and in celebration of the life we share together. Could we please join in the first two verses of our opening hymn, America the Beautiful, whose words are in the order of service. Could we please join in our unison affirmation? It's in the order of service. You start. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. Please be seated. America the Beautiful was written by Catherine Lee Bates, who was from Falmouth. She was from Falmouth. She was a daughter of the Congregational minister in Falmouth. And she went to Wellesley College when it was a brand new school in the 1870s, I think. And then after a while, she became a professor at Wellesley College, a professor of English. And she was very active in a lot of social justice work throughout her life. She never married. She had what is called a Boston marriage. It's kind of an ambiguous term. It means two women devoted to each other who spend their lives together, living together. And were they lesbians? We don't know. We don't know. But she was part of a Boston marriage until her partner died first, I think, and then she did just a few years later. She died in the 1920s. She's a very interesting woman. And if you look her up on Wikipedia, for example, there's just a lot of very interesting information about her. I like America the Beautiful because while saying that we have good qualities, it keeps reminding us that we don't, right? In the very first verse, crown thy good with brotherhood. Well, that implies that brotherhood, the crowning hasn't taken place yet, right? The brotherhood is not complete yet. And in the second verse, God mend thine every flaw, right? Implying that we have, I like that. I have just one announcement, really. Well, I guess I want to remind everybody that though we usually have potluck on the second Sunday of the month, we're not going to do that next week. We're not going to do that next week but the week after, September 21st, so the third Sunday, the third of our Sundays will be the potluck. That's because the floor in the community room is going to be stripped and waxed just the day before. That is this coming Saturday. So to set up for a potluck a day later is, anyway. Notice we have a nice new floor here. Yeah, yeah. And it's not just here, it's all the way down the corridor and in the kitchen and in all the bathrooms. It's nice. There's going to be outside construction the next 3 days. They're going to put a concrete walk-in on the side. They're going to replace concrete in the front, and they're going to replace a segment of our driveway. So the driveway will be off limits, and the building will be hard to get into tomorrow, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Maybe you're too soft.
My voice is not too soft. How about this? Yeah. I can't talk much louder and keep talking. This is better. Okay. Okay. Are there other announcements?
Yeah, I want to speak on.
So I wanted to say, I'm so happy to be back. Very happy. Yes. I mean, I like my leisure Sunday mornings, but I do look forward to this too. So the break was really wonderful. Thank you, Richard, for starting us off with a big and I really like that. And I'd like to let everybody know that Julianne Zimmerman will be here next Sunday. She comes from someplace up north. I think they travel quite a distance to get here, so please make her feel welcome. And I wanted to also mention that the ladies' social committee. You have a name? You can change it if you like. Met twice over the summer. Nice mid-summer catch-ups. It was delightful and charming. I so enjoyed it. And we are meeting again on October 15th at Lights in Westport. So I think everyone here is familiar with what I'm talking about. So that's really good. Thank you.
For those that are Florida residents, United for Faith Action and Coalition for Social Justice are doing a mayoral forum this coming Wednesday at the Good Shepherd Parish, 5:30 to 6:30 for the resource fair, and at 6:30 is when the forum will start. It's not a debate, it's a contentious forum. We have very specific questions on housing, education, infrastructure, public safety, things like that.
Homeless.
Yeah, homeless is mentioned.
And all candidates.
And all four candidates that are currently, that are raised will be there. Yeah. We went from 3 to 2 to then 4, so we've got them all this time.
So Sunday, on Wednesdays, we still have our discussion that meets at 9 o'clock every Wednesday morning. We just finished up a couple of months, or maybe a month and a half of store season. And so now we're scratching our heads thinking about what next is on our agenda. We haven't come to a conclusion yet. So if anyone's interested in attending some of these, you have some ideas on some future kinds of activities that you'd like us to discuss, It's welcome. We could continue with a class on Buddhism or Confucianism or Taoism or whatever it is. We're all open to any kind of philosophical or theological discussions that interest you. So, feel free to join us. It's pretty, I think we still publish the number in the thing.
Yeah.
The number's published on the bulletin.
Yeah.
You can get the bulletin online.
Yeah.
And it's open, just forward, password, it's very easy to have a computer or a phone and Zoom.
Tom Lehrer died in August. He was a math teacher, but in the 50s, he recorded some satirical songs. And there was a revival in the 60s and then a brief one even in the early 80s. He died at 97. He was a hero of mine. I first heard his satirical songs at 17. I'm going to sing one. This on the theme of Crown Our Good with Brotherhood. He wrote a song called National Brotherhood Week. This is written in the early 60s. There's a reference to Lena Horne and Sheriff Clark. This is a civil rights reference. Lena Horne, you may know, was a black actress and singer who was very prominent in the civil rights movement. And the Sheriff Clark is a sheriff, I forget his first name, but anyway, Clark from Selma, Alabama. He's the guy who turned the fire hoses on the black people lining up to register to vote. So there's a reference in the first verse here. So here's National Brotherhood Week. I have to start low, low, oh. The white folks hate the black folks, and the black folks hate the white folks. To hate all but the right folks is an old established rule, but during National Brotherhood Week, National Brotherhood Week, Lena Horne and Sheriff Clark are dancing cheek to cheek. It's fun to eulogize the people you despise as long as you don't let them in your school. Ah, 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 ah. Oh, the poor folks hate the rich folks, and the rich folks hate the poor folks. All of my folks hate all of your folks. It's American as apple pie. But during National Brotherhood Week, National Brotherhood Week, New Yorkers love the Puerto Ricans 'cause it's very chic. Step up and shake the hand of someone you can't stand. You can tolerate him if you try. Ah, 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 ah. Oh, the Protestants hate the Catholics, and the Catholics hate the Protestants, and the Hindus hate the Muslims, and everybody hates the Jews. But during National Brotherhood Week, National Brotherhood Week, it's National Let's All Smile at One Anotherhood Week. Be nice to people who are inferior to you. It's only for a week, so have no fear. Be thankful that it doesn't last all year. Isn't that a great song? Satirists accomplish more good. One satirist accomplishes more good than 100 preachers shaking their fingers at you and urging you to be good, I think. Let us now be silent together to create an opportunity for prayer or meditation. Dwight Eisenhower was, of course, our president from 1953 to 1961. And before that, he was a 5-star general. He was the supreme commander of the Allied forces in the last years of World War II. But in between, beginning in 1948, he was the president of Columbia University in New York City. And on the day he became president, a reporter asked him about his religion. And this is what he said in response: "I am the most intensely religious man I know. Nobody goes through 6 years of war without faith. That doesn't mean I adhere to any sect. A democracy cannot exist without a religious base. I believe in democracy." I'm going to read it again in a minute, but when he says, "I don't adhere to any sect," he means he's not a member of any religious organization. "I am the most intensely religious man I know. Nobody goes through 6 years of war without faith. That doesn't mean I adhere to any sect. A democracy cannot exist without a religious base. I believe in democracy." Eisenhower didn't have a specific religious belief, but he said a democracy cannot exist without a religious base. So it sounds like what he's saying is By the way, before going further, I should say that after he became president, he did join a church. He joined a Presbyterian church that was a short walk from the White House that some previous presidents had also belonged to. And people close to him said that he did it because he felt obliged to as the president. It was expected then that the president, have some kind of stated religion. So, but in his talk there in the news conference after becoming president of Colombia, he said a democracy cannot exist without a religious base, but he's not a member of any sect. So he seems to think of religious groups as sort of in two layers, that each group has its own particular beliefs, that he's not interested in that, but that there's something in common to at least most religious groups. There's a religious base that he thinks supports democracy, a kind of common denominator among at least most religious people. So I'd like to speculate on what that was. The subtitle or the description of my sermon was, what do people need to believe in order for democracy to work? It's this religious base that Eisenhower was talking about. It's not Christianity, even though lots of right-wing people say, this is a Christian nation, the founders were all Christians, blah, 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 blah. Not Christianity. Remember the Marine hymn? From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Tripoli, which I guess is a city. Is it a city now today? It was once equivalent to Libya and a part of North Africa that included a lot of Libya. That's what I was just singing there. That's the Marine hymn. And there were pirates raiding ships in the Mediterranean off the shores of Tripoli. And the US sent the Marines. This was during George Washington's administration. We sent the Marines to defeat the Barbary pirates. In a treaty that was then hammered out between the US and Tripoli after this military invasion by the US, the treaty wasn't actually ratified until Jefferson was president, which is 2 presidents after Washington. But it was drafted while Washington was president, and he had a crucial part in its drafting. And the treaty with Tripoli that was ultimately signed, but crafted under Washington, said Tripoli was a Muslim country. Our treaty with them said the government of the United States is not in any sense founded upon the Christian religion. The government of the United States is not in any sense founded upon the Christian religion. This is from George himself. And later, when the treaty was eventually ratified under Jefferson, it was, of course, signed by Jefferson and passed by the US Senate. Now, this is official US government policy. You should remember this and tell it whenever anybody tells you this is a Christian country. The government of the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. Washington himself was what is called a deist. A deist, I don't know if you've heard the term, it's kind of out of fashion, but among UUs, it may be back in fashion. Deists are people who believe there is a God who created the universe, but then he just let it run on its own. Let it run according to the laws of physics. He didn't intervene. He didn't perform miracles or send special prophets or anything like that. He just started everything at the beginning. God was the creator, period. Those are deists, people who have that point of view. God created the universe. It evolves by the laws of nature. Deism is not far from atheism. An atheist would say the same thing, except you don't have God at the beginning. I remember hearing a story from another minister who was, this was the new minister at a congregation, so he was meeting the congregants one at a time in his office. And one of them was an atheist, was, announced that he was an atheist and said, I hope that'll be all right. Well, this was a UU church, so yeah, it was fine. And the atheist said, the reason I'm an atheist is, and he pointed outside the window. This church was in Colorado, and there was a beautiful view outside the window of the minister's office. And this congregant went to the window and said, look, don't need God. Just look at this. It's wonderful. There's mountains, and there was a picture it was a view like this. It was a view like this. That's why I put it on the cover. And then a day or two later, this minister was interviewing another new congregant, new to the minister, who said, oh, I believe in God. And he pointed out the window at the same scene and said, look. Washington was a deist. So was his successor, John Adams. So was their successor, James Madison. So probably, this is less clear, their successor, James Monroe, and definitely their successor, John Quincy Adams. Our first 5 presidents were deists, and that's the first 40 years of our existence. That's from 1789 to 1829. This view is firmly in the foundation of our country. Deism is associated with the Enlightenment, something that had happened a century before, when traditional authorities were challenged in all kinds of areas. In 1500, which was before the Enlightenment, religious truth for most people came from the Pope or from other religious leaders, but most of Europe was Christian. America virtually didn't exist except for the Native Americans. Religious truth came from the Pope. Scientific truth, that time and later, came from ancient people. In 1500 or so, the astronomers were still using the book of Claudius Ptolemy. He was a Greek. He had a Roman first name and an Egyptian last name, Claudius Ptolemy, but he was a Greek. And he wrote a book called the Almagest about 135 AD, and it was still being used in 1500. Scientific truth came from ancient people like Ptolemy. Social truth came from the king. Truth wasn't something that people tried to figure out. Truth was something that people were handed. But then this was all turned upside down. And this is the time called the Enlightenment. In religion, there was the Protestant Reformation. In science, there was the beginning of modern science with Copernicus and Galileo and Isaac Newton, principally. And social truth was being discussed. There were political philosophers like John Locke That time is so called the Enlightenment, when all this business about all authority being traditional in religion, in science, in politics, it was all overturned. And with the Enlightenment, Western civilization developed the idea that truth comes from discussions, from talking about it, from questioning everything. It was a time of free thought, free speech, reason, evidence. Copernicus, this is when Copernicus said, no, the sun doesn't go around the earth goes around the sun. It's interesting, though, he didn't have any evidence for that. Copernicus had devised a system for understanding what we call the solar system, the sun and the moon and the planets. He had a system that he liked because it was simpler than the system devised by Claudius Ptolemy back in ancient times, which was still being used. But his system actually didn't work any better. You could use the ancient system of Ptolemy, where the Earth was the center and the sun and the planets went around it. You could use Ptolemy's system to predict something like an eclipse of the sun 10 years from now. And in Copernicus' system, you could also predict an eclipse of the sun 10 years from now, but not any more accurately. There was no practical advantage to saying that the sun was at the center instead of the Earth. But Copernicus said, but my system is simpler. It's simpler. It doesn't involve as many circles. It doesn't involve such lengthy calculations. So it must be more true. He felt God was a mathematician and would have appreciated mathematical simplicity. It was Galileo. Galileo was a believer in Copernicus's system just based on this, the fact that it was more elegant, it was simpler. But he did that before there was any evidence. But Galileo was the person who first came up with evidence that Copernicus was right. He heard about some Dutchman who had made a spyglass, we'd call it a telescope, that brought faraway things close. And apparently this Dutchman had never pointed it at the sky or had not ever said anything about it. If he did, Galileo found out how to make one and made one and pointed it at the sky and saw the first evidence that Copernicus was right and not Ptolemy in ancient times. What he saw was the phases of Venus. When you look at the planet Venus through a telescope, it blows up, like it becomes a disk like the moon. And it has phases. There can be a crescent Venus or a half Venus. There could also be a gibbous Venus. Gibbous is when it's more than half but not full yet. That's gibbous. A gibbous Venus would have been impossible in the ancient system of Ptolemy. So here was evidence for the first time that this new system was true. I'm talking about the Enlightenment because our democracy, we are the oldest sizable democracy in the world, and really the oldest big one ever. I mean, there were small ones in ancient Greece, but they didn't last long. Our democracy developed from the ideas of the Enlightenment. And I had a professor when I was in divinity school at Harvard. The professor said, the way to understand Unitarianism is to think of it as a religious manifestation of the Enlightenment. Unitarianism is a religious manifestation of the Enlightenment. It's a religious manifestation of this time when, for the first time, people felt free to think any way they wanted to say anything they wanted to reason, to give evidence, to discuss things with one another. Unitarianism is a religious manifestation of that. It was originally in the early 1800s. Unitarians were pretty Christian. You couldn't question that. But over time, it became less and less and less and less restrictive. And now Unitarianism is very much like the religious base, that Eisenhower was talking about. He said, I don't adhere to any sect. That means I don't agree to any particular religious denomination's set of beliefs. But a democracy cannot exist without a religious base, and I believe in democracy. Unitarianism it's not unique in this way, but it's today, it's the religious base of democracy. We're not alone. There are other groups like us. In Judaism, there's a group called the Ethical Culture Society. They emerged out of Judaism. They're very much like us. Reform Jews are very much like us. And some branches, some individual Christian churches are very much like us. We're not alone, but the religious base that Eisenhower talked about is basically us. It's our point of view. It's our point of view. What do people need to believe for a democracy to work? Well, basically, what we'd agree on. We disagree on things. Some of us believe in God and some don't, or some of us do, but in a very odd way or an unusual way or a way that others wouldn't accept. Some of us believe in an afterlife and some don't, this sort of thing. We disagree in a lot of things, but what we have in common is the religious base of democracy. It's not unique to us, other groups have it, but it's the religious base of democracy. What do people need to believe for democracy to work? That everybody gets a vote and nobody gets more than one vote. That in an election, either about a candidate or about some referendum issue, I need to believe, the way I think of it is, what if I just lost, right? What would keep me willing to participate in a democratic system? What do I need? I need to believe, yes, that everybody gets a vote. I need to believe that my side got to make its case. Nothing prevented my side from making its case. And at least some on the other side were listening, right? Other people on the other side were willing to listen, at least some of them. People on the other side are rational too. They're not dopes. I may disagree with them. I may have different experiences than they do, but they have reasons that make sense to them, even though I think my reasons are better on this election that I just lost. The other side is rational too, because other people are basically like me. I mean, I'm better than them in some ways. That is, I have more talent, but they're better than me too, in ways. They can do things I can't do. They've had thoughts that I can't even understand, but they're valid. Other people are basically like me, and that means other people are flawed like me. They can cast a vote that's really dumb because they're frustrated. They're really angry because they're lazy. They didn't really look into the issues, because they're tribal, because they wanted to vote the way their friends voted. But the people on my side are like that too. We're frustrated and lazy and tribal. We're all trying to do what's right. The UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, 40 years ago now, described itself with a list of 7 principles, which we still talk about. Some of our preachers talk about. They're in our hymnal. The UUA does not use these 7 anymore. They're history, as far as the national organization is concerned. But at least 4 of them are saying things that are really part of this religious base that's necessary for democracy to work. One of the principles was the inherent worth and dignity of every person. That is, the people who voted on the other side, they're not crazy or evil, you know. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, that's another of the 7 principles of the UUA. Justice and equity and compassion. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Yeah, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and the right of conscience. When the Unitarian Universalist Association was formed in 1961, its birth certificate said, "The foundation of our religious fellowship was a free and disciplined search for truth." So I'm not saying ours is the only religion of democracy, but I'm saying that we're kind of a least common denominator. We and a few other groups, like the Ethical Culture Society in Judaism, we are that religious base that Eisenhower talked about. We are what makes democracy possible. And of course, that base is also common to the Catholics and the Methodists, the people who attend those churches. They have this base too, but they have extra beliefs on top. We just don't have the extra beliefs. And now, for the support of this congregation and its work, the morning offering will be gratefully received and I hope freely given. And I realize I forgot mine. Let's talk about it later. This is our time of sharing joys and concerns.
So I thought that was a great discussion. I don't know why we're not talking real history of founding this country. It's Freemasonry. And Freemasons don't really believe in a particular sect and religion, but they believe in a higher power. I guess the only thing is a higher power. If you mention Freemasons, right, which most of our founding fathers, Eisenhower was a Freemason. You start getting hit with conspiracy theories, right? Because they're a secret society. But they were actually the ones that founded the country. Unitarians had a lot of Freemasons in it. I've always asked them, are there any Freemasons here? And nobody wants to admit that they're Freemasons. Well, they're not Freemasons. So I don't know. But in order to become a Freemason, which I find very fascinating, I would love to actually get into it. You have to ask a Freemason, sure. Freemasons. The proviso, I guess, the requirement is you're not invited to become a Freemason. You have to ask to become a Freemason, and then you become initiated into it. So so you have to meet certain standards. But yeah, they're not. It's not that this country is not a Christian country. It's a Masonic country. Part of the problem with Masonry, right, is that it can be shown to have a lack of morality, because without a God, morals now become something that's man-made. If God, the Creator, doesn't give you a set of guidelines of what life is and what it should be about, then that means all of the guidelines that we operate under, right, are man-made. And we can change our minds. We can say something is good today, oh, and it's ultimately evil tomorrow. Right? So there's no basis in morality. It's one of the big things that concerns me today. I mean, despite the low-level debate going on between the two parties, right? It's very concerning to me now that we have a current president wants to rename the Department of Defense Department of War. I mean, without exposing too much of myself, the reason I voted for this guy is because he wanted to stop all these pointless forever wars, right? Because it's destroying our country, literally, right? I mean, my political activity started in the 60s when I was about, what, 14, right? 13, 14, protesting against the Vietnam War because it was not only an illegal war, it was an evil war, right? Now it seems like the Democratic Party wants war. I mean, they're globalists, they're elitists, they're warmongers. But now we're turning in that way. It's starting to turn, it seems, this party, as it's being led now, going back there. And it's kind of very scary, because we're at a point now in our human history where I think morality is is not only very serious, but required for us to conduct our lives as a rational species on this planet. Because if we go into another world war, it's probably going to be the end of it, right? Because it's a thermonuclear war, all-out thermonuclear war. Despite what these maniacs think, it's probably not going to be survivable for 99.9%. Those clowns with their bunkers might survive it for a little while, but the rest of us are history.
I have a joy, and it's to do with our friend Dave Osborne, who I think at least half of you know, because he plays guitar in the and it was August 30th, he became a grandfather. So I thought, I want to know that maybe Julia was born healthy, happy, feelings good, and days good. So I want to pass that along to you.
Thank you. Yeah. I just wish you prayer, my sister who lost her unexpectedly. What's her name? Yeah. My youngest son was going to have a very invasive surgery for circulation. Again, my youngest son is going to have a very invasive surgery. His circulation is very poor in his voice. We want to find it, but he has survived and through life. But on Wednesday, he's going to have very frightening invasive surgery. I would like positive here. What would be on first?
Tom Miller had another song that had the line, Al. I'll look for you when the war is over in an hour and a half from now. It's about World War III.
I have a joy, big joy. About 10 days ago, I bought myself an adult mobility scooter, an electric scooter. As Steve will tell you, I get on that sucker and I'm out and about. I'm a free man now, get out of the house, and I'm cruising all over the city, from all over the water areas, or all the ships. I've never got to really get up close. I went almost as far as Tiverton on this little scooter. It's amazing, it's unbelievable, it's got some power, but I like it because it's slow and enjoyable, and it's a blast. So if anybody wants one, Walmart, they sell them online, very simple to get them delivered, but they are the joy. I'm telling you, you will have time of your life and get it from A to B at a slow pace, but a fun pace. And I'll tell you, you have joy. And I have pictures to prove. I got it.
Our closing hymn is the other two verses of America the Beautiful. May ours be a religion that, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. Amen.